Welcome to iRise Conversations with Joan. Welcome to iRise Conversations with Joan. My name is Joan Nwosu, and I'm the award-winning author of the book iRise, The 10 Secrets to Getting Up When Life Knocks You Down. So the truth is, we all have dreams and goals in life, but a lot of the time, we wait for permission to go after them. I wonder why. We oftentimes want our friends and our family to run this race with us, cheering us on and validating every single step that we take. Unfortunately, that is never really the case. So today we want to talk about giving yourself the permission to show up and create the life that you desire. Our guest today is Patty Aubery. She is a powerhouse of wisdom, creativity, and authenticity. She can be your best friend or the tough love that you need to get unstuck when it seems impossible. She's been there and done that from her early days of building one of publishing's first billion-dollar brands. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, Chicken Soup for the Soul, to her current role as president of the Canfield Training Group. She has created an inspiring life for herself and for others around the world. For over 30 years, Patty has been training and coaching entrepreneurs, educators, corporate leaders, and people from across 108 countries on how to create the life and results that they desire. Her most recent book, Permission Granted, is currently one of the tops on multiple bestsellers list. Welcome, Patty, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure to have you here. So let's go way back to young Patty. Way back. What was it like for you growing up? Because now you're this big powerhouse. What were your beginning days like?
Well, I grew up in sort of an ordinary family, or so I thought. We all think we have a normal family. I'm like, maybe not so much. But I grew up, I was one of four kids. My dad worked, my mom stayed home. She had four kids in 6 years. And so she was quite busy. We had one car. And so we walked to the market a lot and went to, the bread store that's all discounted and the milk store and those kinds of things. And I was kind of my mom says I was a shy child, which is kind of hard to believe at this point, but I knew I wasn't the smartest kid in the class. And so the teacher would give us homework and I would say, how about everybody come over to my house after school? Because most of the moms worked in my neighborhood. And I would say, okay, now what are we doing? So I was sort of running mastermind groups in third grade and I had no idea I was doing it, but I had to pass my classes. And so I would populate, the smartest girl here and the smartest girl there. And I didn't really know I was doing it. And so I did that. And then I ended up, I went to Catholic school most of my life, graduated. I lived in the San Fernando Valley. And if anybody knows Cheech and Chong, the old movie, Up in Smoke and all that stuff, Cheech Marin's mother was my dean. She was about 4 or 5, and you did not mess with her, which is kind of hysterical today. And then from there, I went to San Diego State, and it took me about 7 years to get through that. Again, I wasn't a great student. And I came back from school. I met a guy. I got married way too young, wrong person. I was codependent. I didn't know anything about this work. I'd never experienced any self-help or anything, and just thought I was responsible to make this person happy. He was Italian from New Jersey. I was, this Irish Catholic girl from the Valley saying, oh my God, totally. We did not mesh at all. I had heartburn all the time. Like, why are you screaming about what's for breakfast? Just complete culture shock, right?
Yeah.
But because of him, I ended up working at a tech company, and it was in Santa Barbara. And I was the lowest person on the totem pole. I was answering the phones. I didn't really have a vision or really know what I wanted. I knew I wanted something big, but I didn't know what it was. And my dad would say to me in high school, my daughter's taking typing. And I'd say, I'll have a secretary to do that. My dad's like, that's not the right answer. My father was a typist in the Army, and he said, everybody needs to know how to type. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I took the typing class, thank the Lord. And and got into this tech company and realized it just wasn't for me. I
Mhm.
was always in trouble. I was always late, or I said the wrong thing, and the bosses were all white old men with very traditional women are seen and not heard, and that doesn't work for me. And so I decided to move back to LA with my first husband. We moved into my parents, and I started looking for a job. And that's when you looked in the newspaper, because there was no other way to look, right? And I saw this ridiculous post that said secretary wanted 25,000 a year. And my goal, I just set one goal, because my boss that was leaving the company had said, hey, you should come to this 1-day workshop. I didn't know what a goal was, but I said, okay, I want to make 25,000 a year. And that was a lot. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then I see the word secretary. I'm like, oh, can't be. How can they both be in the same sentence? So I answered the ad, and it turned out that it was Jack. It was Jack Canfield and his second wife, Georgia. And I went to this job interview, and at the time he was teaching self-esteem in the classroom.
Mhm.
And he had this little tiny 3-story townhouse, and I went in and there was incense burning. They were kind of hippie, and so I always say to people, if you're listening, don't let your daughter go to an interview at a stranger's home, please. So it was crazy. And I went, and I didn't really get what they were doing. And self-esteem was still really new. It was in the mid 80s. And so I thought that was a little woo-woo and wasn't really sure. But like the number, like the fact that the hours were 10 to 6. So I had time to commute, which was a long commute. And then he called back and said, I'm sorry, we chose someone else that has had more experience in the hotel industry. And it said something like was older in a way. And I said, okay, just so you know, that's an HR bad move, buddy. Don't say it to anybody else.
Mhm.
And I kind of joked. And I said, well, thank you very much. It was nice to meet you. And then felt really down, because I thought, gosh, you always want what you can't have. And as much as I wasn't really that attached to the outcome, I got really attached when I heard the word no. And so I, kind of went home and was sort of moping around. And at the same time, I'm not in a very good marriage at all. And about, I don't know, 3 months after that interview, maybe even less, Jack called me and said, hey, I just think we're supposed to work together. This woman didn't work out.
Wow.
Would you come back and do another interview? And I said, sure, for 30,000. And he said, oh, okay. And so I was like, okay, he's kind of normal. He's nice. He's easy. Maybe 30,000 could be 300 someday, and maybe 3 million. I mean, now I'm in this like dream big place
Mhm.
in my life. And so I came in and started as a secretary, and he basically left and he was traveling on the road. He was teaching teachers how to teach self-esteem in the classroom. And so he was gone a lot. And so I just sort of started looking around, like, what do I do? And I was not the kind of person that did well with rules, but I also needed a little bit of structure.
Mhm.
And because I grew up in a business world working for my dad's company, I didn't work for my father, but I worked for someone in operations who was really pretty brutal. So it taught me a lot more than I ever learned in school. And I started to look around, and I looked at that typewriter's archaic, and this computer system's costing all this money. And I could export this stuff. I know how to write code. And so when he came back, I said, oh, I got rid of this person, and it was our computer guy, and I replaced everything for half, and this is what I'm doing. And I want my job to be the vice president of operations, because I think I'm running the show.
No way.
And he said, all
Wow.
right, make yourself some business cards. I said, okay. And it was hard for me to do that, but I thought, I don't want to be a secretary, and I'm not. I'm doing sales and marketing and finance and everything else. And it was just the two of us, and it was crazy. And so it was probably very soon after he came back from a trip, and he said, all these women keep asking me, is that story in a book? Is that story in a book? And he would say, no, but they're on my Nightingale Conant tapes, or, oh, they're on my career. And most of the women would say, but I don't listen to tapes in my car. I mean, I'm driving my kids, and when the kids aren't in the car, I don't want to listen to anything. It's like chaos central as it is. And so he came home, he said, I think we're supposed to take the best stories that all these speakers tell and put them in a book. He said, I don't know what took me so long, but this is feedback. I've heard it 1,000 times now. And so at 25 or whatever I was, I said, okay, let's do it. And I always say, I'm so glad I was only 25, because today I would have had an opinion. I'd have been like, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
We had a foundation at the time, the Foundation for Self-Esteem, which went into, we taught people coming off of welfare, people in prison, goals. It was called the Goals Program. And our director was like, you're crazy. It's going to ruin your careers. You're never going to get a corporate job. I'm like, we don't even have corporate jobs. Like, we're probably getting POs paid from the schools. Like, I don't think we have much to lose. And so we embarked on that in 1989, and we struggled for years, and finally got it finished in 92, and then realized nobody wanted to publish it. They all said, this is a dumb idea. And America doesn't like this whole warm and fuzzy stuff. They like blood and guts, and, we're not going to sell. But we knew from Jack being on stage and telling his stories and other people's stories that he was getting huge responses. So we had tested it, thank God, because we might have believed that we needed somebody else's permission to keep going, but we didn't. We just needed to give ourselves permission to hold on to the vision and the dream. And the big dream was, if we get a best-selling book, we'll get higher speaking fees. And we wasn't like, oh, let's build out this whole book brand and create an insanely crazy chicken coop, but we sort of did. And so over the next 18 years, we published 240 titles. We had dog food licensing, we had greeting cards, we had syndicated columns, we had lots of authors, and some were amazing and some were a little crazy. That's what you get with the creatives. We're all a little crazy. Yep. And with every book came a marketing program. And so every time we launched something new, it was, oh, we have chicken soup for the traveler's soul. Well, let's get a big tour bus and wrap it with a chicken and a backpack and get Southwest to invest and Ford. And I mean, we did some crazy, amazing things. And it all started by just giving ourselves permission to ask and to hold on to these crazy visions, and to focus on what was working and not on what might not work, because that would have been easy to do.
Oh yeah, obviously. Yeah.
For some reason, it didn't cross our mind. So it was a fun adventure. I will say it was sort of like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland. And people would say, what do you do? I would say, I think I'm Chief Chicken. And my kids would say, my mom makes chicken soup and my dad makes golf bags. And people are looking at me like, what? We never see you at the lunches at school. I'm like, oh, no. It's a book series.
So why the name Chicken Soup? Where did that name come from?
Actually, we didn't have a title for a long time. And Jack and Mark, who was our co-author, they both agreed to meditate every day and come up with something. And so after so many days of meditation, which I think is so important for a lot of us to sit and be quiet, to get those downloads that God or the universe is trying to give us, but we're so busy being busy. And he's like, I just saw this chalkboard this morning in my meditation. And I was like, a chalkboard? So what does that have to do with the book? He said, but it had handwriting, chicken soup. And he said, chicken soup. And basically got this message that America was sick. And when he was sick, when he was little, his grandmother would give him chicken soup. And he was like, chicken soup for the spirit? No, chicken soup for the soul. And then he called Mark, and Mark's like, I love it. And talked to his wife. She's like, I love it. I loved it. We all went like, this is great. Yeah, it's perfect. And we all loved it, but then nobody else loved it. Love it. Or like, chicken soup or what? What is the cookbook? I mean, it was the hardest thing to sell on the planet. And then And we went to every publishing house. We were turned down by everyone. Even our agent gave us the book back, which in today's world, I'm very grateful because we didn't have to pay him 15% of everything, which was a lot.
Yeah.
But we found a little publisher out of Florida who said, the weirdest thing, this is the weirdest thing, Joan. We went to Book Expo and we had manuscripts. And so I'm in the van driving the caravan and I'm filling up their, backpacks with manuscripts, and they're passing them out and they're talking to people. But we didn't have any place to kind of have as like a camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jack said, well, Health Communications that's here. I know that guy, Peter Begg. So I did something for a self-esteem conference for him because he also ran self-esteem conferences for therapists. And so we put our stuff there and we went everywhere else. And if you've ever been to a book show, I mean, there's thousands of booths, probably less now, but at the time it was a big deal. And then after 3 days of no's, Jack was walking out to the car and Peter, the guy that we'd been parked our stuff in front of, said, hey, I'll take a look at your manuscript. And Jack said, well, yeah, but I really want someone that really wants to publish. He's like, well, maybe I'll want to publish it, but I need to read it. And so he read it and he called from the airport. He said, I'm 3 stories in, I'm all in.
Wow.
And I never knew that story until about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We did a documentary called The Soul of Success, which you can watch on Amazon, and it's free. But he told that story when we were interviewing him. I said, I never realized that. But what it made me realize was how often what we're looking for is right in front of us if we pause long enough to notice.
Yeah.
And he was the answer. He was right there. Yet
Wow.
we're looking, like I would say, you don't have to open your front door, step over the people on your porch, go down the street, get on a bus, get off the bus, go to a different neighborhood, talk to that. It's like start where you're planted and give yourself permission to share your vision with everyone, because you just don't know who's going to tell who, or who's going to be right there saying, I love this. And so it was it was amazing. And it turned out to be so perfect because it was a small publisher and they did everything from editorial to printing to distribution. And so there was not a New York company that we had to deal with all the bureaucracy. And I could get a yes by just calling and saying, I was like, so that worked really well.
Wow.
And he really invested in the business and he bought equipment, and we were able to deliver, at one point, I think we were printing 500,000 books a week. So in order to, it's like once that starts to roll, then it's not about, am I going to have a bestseller? It's, can I deliver? And do we have enough financial backing to make it happen? And so he was pretty well versed and saw, I think, a lot sooner than we did that it would work. Wow. And so he sent us a lot of free books for a long time. I mean, they weren't free, but he'd be like, you owe me 100,000. You gotta keep sending me books, because if we don't sell them in the back of the room at our events, we're not gonna be able to eat, and then we can't do anything else. And so, I think we didn't see a real royalty check for about 1.5 years, but that was okay. It was worth the wait.
Absolutely. That is such a phenomenal story, like the story of your life and now the story of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I think it just shows that, like you said, once you have a vision and you believe in it, just keep going. You might get 1,000 no's, but all you need is a yes, and you don't know where that yes is going to come from. And I think that's really inspirational for people who might be feeling stuck or waiting for that permission for someone to say, yeah, go ahead, you can do this, you got this, you're on the right track. You need to, first of all, like sit still, believe in yourself, and just hold on to that dream. It will come true. And even your story about getting the job, that's just wow. Asking for more money. Okay, that's a hint. So when they come back, please ask for more money. So now let's talk a little bit about your book. So we mentioned, the phrase permission granted. Why did you write that book? Why is there a need for people to give themselves the permission to live the life that they want?
I think, at least for me, and I think for most women, we are always in service mode. It's always about we did this, we collective, and we're caretakers by nature. And I think lots of times we expect, members of the opposite sex to think the same way, which is why John Gray wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, because we don't.
We don't, yeah.
And so as we started to grow the company, and I did ask for what I wanted, but I didn't ask for enough of what I wanted, for sure. I didn't give myself permission to say, this is really more of a three-way street than a two-way street. I published a lot of books. I had a lot of my own New York Times bestsellers. I did very well, but I also kind of considered myself lucky when really I probably made $2 an hour for about 4 years. I mean, I was working 18-hour days and I didn't give myself the credit. So I had to start there at some level. And then we sold Chicken Soup in 2008. And it was a rough time. The economy was not doing well.
Mhm.
And we sort of were losing our identity. And then we were looking about like, well, what do we do next? And so the question is, well, what do we want to do? Because how often do we really say, what do we really want to do? And so I thought, well, what if we went out and trained people using the success principles, which had come out a couple of years before that, on how we built this billion-dollar brand by using these principles. And we can train other people to go out and teach this stuff because Jack's a teacher by nature, and he always taught teachers anyway. And I said, now that we have this brand behind us, we can still bring in the self-esteem and the self-confidence and all the believe it's possible stuff, but we can also bring in some of the business strategy. And so we did, and it started to go really well. We did it once a year. And then we got to a place where I was in the room and I was thinking, I think I could probably be on that stage, but I'm going to wait. He must not really want me up there, because if he did, he would ask. And at one point, I just found myself getting frustrated and getting tired of doing the same thing, of being the president and running the business side. I was seeing women struggle. And so at one point, I was very upset. So I was not graceful about it. And I said, I'm giving myself permission to be high maintenance, and I'm going to do what I want. And it's like, whoa, we're on the freeway. He's like, we're getting off the freeway for this conversation. And I just said, I really want to train more. I want to speak. I want to empower women. I mean, this audience that you're speaking to is me. And I'm a living example of a woman who came from nothing, has an amazing marriage, has 2 incredible kids, and built a business with all the resentment, all the guilt, all the shame of where I should be, where I shouldn't be. And I just felt like I had a message to share. And he was like, well, but I have so much that I need to do. And so my story was, I'm not good enough. And then I was in Hawaii. I'd built a home in Hawaii. It was a crazy idea. I don't recommend it, especially during those years of a recession. But it was huge. And I met with this psychic that John Gray had introduced me to. And she said, here's the thing. Until you give yourself permission to use your voice, this house is going to strangle you. Because it was bleeding me. I mean, it was so expensive and it was just a big deal. And so I was angry because I didn't pay more attention. I gave my husband all the power. I just wasn't owning my responsibility. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do a retreat. And so I told Janet Atwood, who wrote The Passion Chest, and she haunted me. Her and Lisa Nichols were like, girl, you are not getting out of this. I'm like, I should have never told them, because it was a brave moment, right? And so I said to the psychic, well, can't Jack teach? And she said, no, you have to. I said, well, can he come at least? He's like my blankie. And she said, sure. And I probably said 5 words, literally 5 words of that first retreat. And that was 22 retreats ago, in several years. But I think the biggest turning point for me was my frustration kept growing. I wasn't really getting my needs met. And my mom was re-diagnosed with cancer. And I knew it had been a long time coming, and I knew that it had gone into her bones, but I was in Hawaii and I thought something's not right. And so I called the doctor, and this is probably not TC approved or whatever it is, but it said, if you're a doctor, press 1. So I pressed 1 and I said, this is Dr. Aubery. I need to talk to you about my patient, Linda Mitchell. And he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that she had a daughter who's a doctor. I said, I think the reason she's falling is because it's like her cancer is like in the fluid. It was in her tailbone. I think it's in her spinal fluid and you're not seeing it. And he said, well, if that's the case, she doesn't have a lot of time. And I had 14 people in my house doing kind of a trial run of what it would look like if I actually did a retreat, and literally hung up the phone, packed up my clothes and said, honey, you can do whatever you want with these 14 people, but I got to go. And I got to my mom's hospital room and I walked in and she said, they think you're a doctor. And I said, I know, because it was Vegas and I couldn't get anything done. And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And it was terrible healthcare. And it came back positive. It was that she started having seizures. And when she was in hospice, she said to me, promise me that you will not hide any longer. I did not raise a daughter to be invisible. And you must go out. And I don't care if you're scared. And I don't care if these men aren't the ones that put you up there. You need to use your voice and take responsibility because you created one of the biggest book series of all time. And they didn't do it without you. And they wouldn't have done it without you. And so I said, okay. And so I held my first women's retreat and I was scared to death. And it went okay. I invited another gal that she knew more than I knew. She was like, well, where's the outline? I said, well, my middle name is Wing It. I don't have an outline because I didn't know how to put a training together. Here I am like just selling the dream. And so over time, of course, I created the Success Principles certification course, which really taught me how to think in a very linear form. And I completely drove Jack insane 2 years saying, why do you do this? Why do you do that? He's like, stop asking. I'm like, I need to know. I need to know how to do this. And so, so today, of course, I always have an outline or I have something.
Yes.
So don't be worried if you ever come to one of my workshops. It's a plan. But I literally didn't have one, but I knew I had to do it. And I knew that the only person that could give me permission to show up was myself.
Yes.
And it wasn't going to come from anywhere else. And Jack said at one point, he's like, listen, if you ever find a man that's a mind reader, you send him my way and I will study him from head to toe and I will learn whatever it is I need to learn because I'm not a mind reader. You have to ask.
Yeah.
But it was still a struggle. I really had to give myself permission to not be perfect, to know that, I wasn't going to compare myself to him. I went to Harvard and I went to San Diego State as a Valley girl with big hair and long red nails that could type, by the way. And he didn't believe it when he met me. Like, show me, the long nails.
The long nails.
Oh my gosh. So now today, I still run a lot of workshops with Jack. We're about ready to do a breakthrough success. We're going to do it out of Charleston, which is exciting. It's live in a studio. We're still not doing live, but that's always fun. And he'll say more than me. So if anybody's watching out there, the AV team, I said, can you just get me a perch so I can look like a parrot and just add in my 2 cents? But it's like even to go from not being on stage to being there and adding in and running a few segments myself, it's taken me a long time to get there, but I had to give myself permission to be afraid.
Yes.
And I had to say yes to things that scared the heck out of me. And that made me accountable enough to show up.
I love it because again, that's one of the things that really keeps people stuck where, oh, I'm not an expert. I don't know what to say. What would I do? How would I show up? What's an outline? People are going to laugh at me. We worry so much about what hasn't happened or what could go wrong that you forget the vision, the goal that you had in your heart that was pushing you to do this. So I think that is such a good inspiration for people. If you have something that you really feel called to do, you're lucky you had a mom who just told you, do not hide. But I don't think any of us were created to hide. We all have a message, we all have a voice, and we have to use the gifts that the universal God has given us. So do it afraid. Don't expect to be perfect. Give yourself permission to not be perfect. That's okay. It's your imperfection that people will probably resonate with. Yeah, no
It
one
is.
wants
It's perfect. It's being perfectly imperfect, right?
exactly.
And I think the more transparent and authentic you are about that, the more people can relate to you.
Yeah.
I have a friend, she has a company called Goal Friends, and it just got voted best program in the women's prison system in Virginia, which is amazing. Took us 11 years to get there, so things don't happen quickly.
Wow.
And she said to me, she's Southern, she's like, how long am I going to have to suck before I get good? You don't suck now. And she's like, oh, seriously. I'm like, okay, 20 times. She's like, I'm on 15, I'm on 16. And now she just gets up and does what she does. But the first time I had her on stage, she's like, hello. I mean, I was like, oh no. But you know what? We all start somewhere. And,
Yes.
you know, when we learn to ride a bike, we fall off the bike. When we learn to walk, we have to crawl first and we still fall. And I still fall, you know, but it's just, it's something, if you're called to do something, it's really important too, to share your vision with people that will support it. And I think if you're sort of that creative type and you get an idea like me, which is scary sometimes, I don't just go run to my bookkeeper and tell her, because she's going to freak out. You know, she needs to know 1 + 1 = 2.
Mhm.
And so I had to learn how to get my vision more clear. And literally, I would go to Jack and I would say, I have this idea. You know, he's like, oh, great. And I think he probably thought I was Charlie Brown's teacher, like, rah, 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 more work for Jack. And he would ask me 100 questions and I would get really upset. And he would say, no, listen, I just don't think that quickly. And so I'm catching up. So just give me a little bit of grace too while you're going through the process.
Yes.
So what I would say to anybody listening is make sure that you share it with people that are willing to support you, and that you don't take it personally. No just means next.
Yes, a tough one.
And remember this: we are the generation of women that are here for a very important reason. And if we don't give ourselves permission to show up, we're going to be having conversations 3 generations from now that are not going to be conversations that we would ever even hope to hear. And so if it takes putting it on your daughter or your son or someone that you sometimes maybe love more than you love yourself, if you can't do it for you, give yourself permission to do it for them, because what we do is much louder than what we say. And we need to be the example.
Yes, absolutely. We need to be. So talking about surrounding yourself with the right people, I know some people are lucky. They might just have someone like a mentor or a coach or someone who's done what they want to do that they can run it by. But a lot of the times people look to this inner circle. So their friends who probably haven't done anything remotely ambitious in their life, you know, or their family members, or just people that the environment, their immediate environment, and then they are met with, that's not possible. I know someone who tried who didn't succeed. How important is it to not share, especially if you're just starting this process? How important is it to not share those goals and dreams with naysayers? What impact does that have?
Well, I mean, at my age now, I would say, if you tell me it's impossible, you better get out of my way. I'd rather be rich and happy. But in the beginning, I think it's important to at least like be able to say it out loud, even if you do it in the mirror, or do it with 1 or 2 people that are willing to ask you questions to help you clarify it more, articulate it better so it lands and you can communicate it to other people. Because a lot of times people start out and they say these things, but no one understands. And so if you don't understand, you can't support someone in something. But I would say, you know, find those few people that love you enough to want to see you succeed. And I mean, when I took this job with Jack, my dad was so upset. It's like, you are going to work for a few bad words, hippie. I said, the hippie went to Harvard. I mean, I might get a Harvard education for nothing, Dad. Worst case, I'll come back and live with you. And it took him a long time to really accept that. And then he started to see the success. But I didn't let it stop me. I just knew intuitively I had to do it. And I have learned to protect myself and to talk to the right people about my vision, and find the people that are more linear than I am, and learn to appreciate the differences. Because if I hired people just like me, my life would be insanity. And so I have to find, my vice president of operations, who is very linear and logical and knows technology and all the things I knew at 30 that I don't know anymore, but is also willing to live on the edge and to support the vision of what that dream looks like. But really, I mean, no, or that's a bad idea, or it's been tried before. That's just somebody coming from fear. That is most likely just an opinion, and it's not really a fact. And so if you go to an expert and say, I want to do this, tell me where you think the potholes are going to be. What roadblocks am I going to run up against? Then you can make more of an educated decision. But if you're called to do something, then, once you know, you can't not know.
Absolutely. Once you know, you cannot know. And that was going to be my next question, because I have met people who say, I don't feel like I was called to do anything. I have no skills. I have no talents. I'm just here to exist and just move on. Does everyone have a purpose or a calling? And for those who haven't uncovered it, how can they go about really finding what that true calling is?
Well, that is probably the question of the decade, or at least the last 5 decades been around. This is what I do. I say to people, go out and ask people what they see your strengths are and what your unique qualities are. And I give them a sheet and I say, ask 5 people, because most likely your purpose comes so naturally to you that you overlook it. And, oh, that's easy. Anybody can do that. That's not so true. And then the next step is, well, if you love this, how do we learn how to monetize that? And go from there. But so many people are like, oh my God, my purpose, I can't get my purpose. Like, I didn't know for years. I was like, I remember Jack calling me saying, I'm doing a show on life purpose. What's yours? And I said, what? You mean this was my purpose? I didn't know I was in this, I never really thought about it. But, and it changes over time. And I think it changes with the decades. And, my purpose in my 30s was to build a business and support my family and be there for my kids. And in my 40s, it was to figure out what the world wasn't seeing or saying, and how I could maybe find those spots where I could find that niche. And in my 50s, it's really to empower women to believe that they can achieve whatever it is they want, but you have to be willing to have the awareness that you actually have a choice in everything that you do. From the time your alarm goes off in the morning to the minute your head hits the pillow, every single thing is an event. And the way you respond to those events create your outcomes. And so this morning, my alarm went off, I hit snooze, my friend called and said, I'm at your gate, time to walk. I'm like, oh crap. And I walked for 2 miles. I probably walked 10,000 steps. It was great. And we had a great conversation. And so it made the rest of my day better. And so you have to really start to look at all of my responses, whether they're habitual, which a lot of them are, or they're knee-jerk reactions, which a lot of them are, don't have to be. I can choose to respond with intention to every single thing. And when you learn that your response is totally in your control, whether your husband's in a bad mood or your kid ran out in front of a car and almost got hit and you freaked out, or, whatever. Everything is a chance for you to say, that's a story, but is it a fact? When you can start looking at that and then look at, gee, I really am responsible for my life. If I change these R's, I can change my life. So now the question is, what do I want to do? And then the question is, what actions do I need to take to get there? And what support do I need? And lots of times it's asking for help. It's getting a coach. It's, sitting in prayer, meditation, being quiet so you can hear what you need to hear. And then sharing that with other people. And I've shared some amazing things where people have said, oh my gosh, I love that idea. I'd love to fund it. I almost dropped dead of a heart attack on the soccer field. When my son's friend's dad said, I'll write you a check for $1 million. And he did. And I literally was working on vision boards when The Secret came out. And I could have said, oh, same old stuff, different day. But I said, yeah, I'm creating these vision boards because, everybody says they look like ransom notes. And it was like, oh, let's do an infomercial. I'm totally into this stuff. And I went back to my office and I said, hey, Jack, we're doing an infomercial and it's been paid for. And it's the guy that does George Foreman. And he's like, what? You should go to more soccer games. So, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think we all want to help each other. And we feel good when we do. And one of my friends, David Meltzer, he owns a company called Sports One Marketing. And he said to me, how do you feel when you help people? I said, amazing. I mean, it's what I do all day long. So I try to do at least. And he said, well, do you realize that if you don't ask us for help, that you're robbing us of that same feeling that you get to have? And I went, oh.
Wow. I love that.
So a complete reframe, right?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. Don't be afraid to ask for help because you're robbing someone else from the joy of helping. I love it. That's amazing.
And the other thing too is just acknowledge, oh, this is just me being scared. And I get to have a choice. I can walk through the fire or whatever it is that's scaring the heck out of me. And I'll survive the other side. I always tell people I've never seen anybody explode. I've never seen guts on the wall ever in my whole life as a speaker, coach, trainer, or anything else. And that's the only way to build the confidence is by doing these things. And I sat in the back of a room for 25 years through every workshop thinking, one day I'll just know this. And that one day didn't happen until my mom said, promise me, you will not be invisible.
Wow.
So, and has it been easy? No. Has my husband thought I'm crazy? Yes. Would he like to stay at home wife? Absolutely. Did he get any of that? No. So we have all of our own battles, right?
Absolutely. It's never easy. And I think that is, first of all, with the figuring out what your purpose is, people think it's this big, humongous. No. And I love the exercise that you mentioned because I did something similar. I just sent it out to my close friends, people who know me for like 30 years, and the same things came back. So that's really an easy way to really know what your true talents are and what you were called to do. Easy. And then, like you said, get the help that you need to monetize it. And then just you never know. Just share it. You don't know who might want to invest. You just don't know. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Patty. I think you've really given us a lot to think about, a lot to start to give ourselves permission, especially for women. Men, I don't think men have this problem at all. I think it's we as women who keep self-doubting and we're like, oh, could I? What do you think? No, maybe I should just stay at home. Maybe I'm called to do this, just be a mom. I think you've given us enough to really think about hey, is this what I want to do? Get clear on what your goals are. And then that's all you need. Give yourself the permission to go ahead and do it. The final thing I want to talk about now is Goal Friends. I know you mentioned it briefly. What is that? And is it something that people can be a part of? Is it open to everyone?
Sure. It originally started out as just a program that anybody could start. It's a $49 workbook that you can buy at goalfriends.com. And typically the average group is between 8 and 12 people. So typically one woman will go in and say, I'm going to buy 10 books and start a group. It gives you everything you need. It starts with a bucket list. Every word is a G word. So, if you don't like it, give it a golectomy or give it more glossopy. We have a whole book coming out of just, it's basically a glossary of words.
Oh, wow.
And my partner, Darlene Whitehurst, is one of the most unbelievably creative people on the planet. And so it's her baby. And she came to me 11, 12 years ago with her high heels on at one of my workshops, had her little book together. And she said, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to do this. And I said, what do you do? And she said, I own an ad agency. I said, you're not quitting yet. A lot harder than it looks, girl. I was going to tell you up front, if you don't know what an outline looks like, you don't want to do this yet. And she always said, I feel like it's supposed to be a nonprofit. I feel like this is like a God calling for me. And so we did it, with all kinds of women, and we're in, I don't know, 25 countries or something. It's only in English right now, but when COVID happened, people used it, but we really couldn't do anything live. And then we just did a proposal to the prison system, and we literally got voted best program of the year for last year. And it was so cool when she called me. She said, "Girl, we're on the docket. We're in trouble." And I said, "Oh no, what did we do?" And she said, "They ran out of workbooks." And so
Oh, wow.
it's just so cool to see these women, and they're getting certified in their PhD. And so these women now are inmates are certifying other women. And Darlene went and spoke, and the head of the correctional facility, the warden, came, and Darlene moved the podium aside and she said, "Warden, these are my girlfriends now. Do not give me the keys. I will let them out." This was a woman who was scared to death to get on a stage. Wow. And so it's been a fun project. So it's easy, it's simple, it's inexpensive. Anybody can buy it and use it in any form or fashion.
I love it. And it's girlfriends.com.
Yeah, girlfriends.
That's super amazing. Okay. So I know you have a retreat coming up next year. What can people expect from your retreats? Who is it for, first of all, and what can they expect?
Well, I have a couple of retreats. So I have one in January, and I don't know the dates, but if you go to pattyaubery.com, you can look. And that's a women's retreat. And we basically get together for 3.5, 4 days and kind of really look at your life purpose and look at where are you and where do you want to go. And we strategically plan, and we get into groups together, and we eat great food, and it's in Nashville. So we go to the sound bowl club, or bring in people to do music, or just whatever. It just depends on the time of year, really, for the fun stuff. But it's really giving women permission to connect at a different level and really examine what they've been up to until now, and taking time to look at where they want to go from here until whatever the next decade, or a lot of people are in that space of, I'm tired of what I'm doing. COVID really kind of gave me a reality check, and I really want to kind of reinvent and take it to a new level. And so that's a big piece of it. And so I'm doing that in January. I'm doing a retreat with Jack this November. I want to say October, November. Well, I don't even know when it is. I want to say it's in October. It's in Santa Barbara. And we only take 24 people. So it's kind of a high-end luxury retreat that I do with him. Nice. And that anybody can find that on jackcanfield.com. It's it's at the Miramar Hotel, which is the most beautiful hotel probably in California. Wow. And inexpensive because we got great rates because we signed before COVID.
Oh, nice.
$2,000 a night instead of $235. That's what we got there. So it's crazy. And then also I'm working on really helping women start to create their keynote, their 45-minute talk, and how do they get out in front of more people? Because I really believe that a lot of women want to share their message, and they go through a lot of different trainings, but until you can really hone it in and get it done with intention and have something at the end to make an offer if they want to create their own little mastermind group or whatever it might be. And I bring in my coach that helped me learn how to create an outline at a whole new level. And so that's another thing that we're doing. And maybe we'll do some other things next year. I don't know what they look like exactly yet. I think there's going to be a Success Principles for Women course coming out soon, which I've been I wanted permission from Jack to do permission granted first, which was a hard ask, but he said, I think it's amazing. You should do it. And so I think I'm ready now to take on a new project, which is big, which would be the Success Principles for Women.
Amazing. Wow, Patty. Such an inspiration, helping a lot of women. So if anyone is feeling stuck and you feel like you're at that point in your life where you really want to pivot, or maybe you don't even know what your purpose is and you're like, okay, I want to go hang out with some other women to figure it out and kind of plan the next decade. What are my next steps? And have the support, like we're talking about, the support of like-minded people who can keep you on track and help you get on that journey. Then you want to go to pattyaubery.com and check out the retreat. Patty, this was super amazing. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Anything I can do to serve.
Thank you so much. This is so amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening today. Thank you, Patty. We loved your message. Everybody go to gofriends.com and go to pattyaubery.com and really take your life to the next level. You do not need permission from anybody else. You only need permission from yourself. Thank you for joining. I'll see you same time next week on iRise Conversations with Joan.